I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, across the bay from San Francisco, and down by the lagoon at the 420 studio. And we're having a good day. The sun is shining. I got to go for a walk with my Tally today. She's not working. And I dug something out that you guys might really enjoy. A couple of weeks ago, I did a tribute to the late Yogi Berra. I did a series of 3 shows, and I've got one more for you. And Charlie Silvera was his backup catcher in the first, what I call the first dynasty the Yankees had in Berra's day, from 1949 to 1953. They won 5 consecutive World Series. And Charlie didn't play very much, but he cashed a lot of World Series checks. And in 1995, I was doing a cable sports talk show for State Hayward. Charlie was one of my guests. And I thought I'd play this interview for you. I dug it out of the archives. And it comes replete with lead-in music for the show, Sports from the Top of the Hill. So let's see if I can get this sucker going, and we might have a show. Let's see what happens.
You want to manage them?
Yeah, take it up
for a while.
Take it up in
Charlie
the mid thing. Charlie
Ralph,
Silvera.
Yeah. Actually, I played a year with the Cubs. 57 was a year that I was sold by the Yankees to the Cubs in the winter of 56. In fact, I was living in New York, and I was home, and a fellow from 42nd and Broadway, a friend of mine, had one of those hot shops down there. Hey, you've just been sold to the Cubs. They didn't have the courtesy to call me.
To call you. That's
no.
some nice working.
Well, anyway, it was great. Now I was there with the best. For the best of
some
times.
Wonderful years.
Right.
There's a recent book that came out that cited that 12 players that played from 1949 to 1953 when the Yankees won 5 consecutive world champions.
Right.
Tremendous years, and you were one of those players. Mickey wasn't. Mickey came in.
No, he came in 51.
You were telling me he was your roommate.
Yeah, briefly. In 51, my roommate Joe Collins had a bad leg, so they had me room with Mickey. So I was a sort of a veteran then, and he's a good guy, and we're still the best of friends, and had a lot of fun with him.
That's wonderful. The biggest point in your career basically was the transition between the days of Joe McCarthy to Casey Stengel. Not the biggest point in your career necessarily, but a very significant point in Yankee history.
Well, yes, it was for a lot of players. Of course, I was in spring training with the Yankees in 56 and did play for Joe McCarthy, and he was a very astute man, a great manager, and I learned a lot from him. In fact, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was he said, young man, he said, are you married? I said, no, sir. You got a girlfriend? No, sir. That's 1946. So he said, well, make sure you know what you're going to do in this game before you get married. And I did. I waited until I got to the big leagues and then got married.
That was Joe McCarthy's.
Joe McCarthy.
All right. Tell me about Casey Stengel a little bit.
Well, of course, I had played against Casey Stengel out here when he was with Oakland, and I was with Portland. This is 47, 48. And my manager was Jim Turner, who ended up being the pitching coach. And I had some good series against Casey. And, of course, now people say, well, what kind of a guy was Casey? So I says, what about that Stengelese? I said, well, the first real conversation that I listened to was I asked him if I could take my wife back to New York and if I was going to make the club. This was in 49. You didn't bring your wife to spring training if you weren't sure of making the club or hadn't played there the year before. So anyway, so Turner says, go talk to Casey. Well, I listened to Casey and the Stengelese for, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, and I went back to Jim Turner. I said, Jim, I don't know what he said. He says, well, he didn't say yes or no, but all he did was talk. He says, well, he said, bring her back. I think he got the club made. And she came back, and I stayed for 9 glorious years, 7 pennants. In fact, my wife, first 5 years in baseball, we won 5 consecutive championships.
Right.
And then in 54, she was wondering where the big check was after we finished second with Cleveland.
My Giants at that time won the pennant.
Well,
you won over 100 games as a Yankee.
We won 103 and lost by 8. That's the only time Stengel ever won 100 games. We lost by 8. Cleveland had a tremendous year that year.
Just the pitching, basically, or?
Well, they had career years from a lot of players. Roberto Avila had won the batting championship. Now Roden had a tremendous year, but they were a good ball club. But
tremendous pitching staff.
That year, my goodness, outstanding.
Yeah. What are some of the misconceptions that people carry on through the years of those Yankee teams? How is the public not fooled, but what are some of the things that you know that they don't know? Just
with the Yankees, we were a close-knit outfit, and the first thing when they told a rookie, we had fellows like Sternwise, Henrik, Billy Johnson, and Lindell. They'd say, "Well, now, kid, you're up here. You don't mess with our money. And if there's no tomorrow, you win today." You said, "Don't say we get them tomorrow. You win today." And more or less, they pleased us. Well, you're out here to win, and there's only one thing, and that's first place.
And as people became veterans, they passed that on. In other words,
certainly. And I was a veteran. We would call a meeting. I remember Jerry Coleman was our player rep, and we would say he would get up there and say, "Well, we got to get together and have a little settee here, and then get these guys straightened out." And he'd say, "Well, we don't want anybody." We don't want to lose this pen over the bar or anybody out with some young lady or something. And they'd point fingers at some of the younger guys, And you were out late, so-and-so, And boy, and from then on it was no contest.
How did the Yankees adjust to losing DiMaggio's leadership? Did Casey come in and kind of take over the team at that point?
Casey was, it's in that book here, that he was smart enough to let things roll a little bit, and he knew that there was the people that played for McCarthy, and of course Casey didn't have that great reputation as a major league manager. Not in the major leagues, no. And so he just and his platooning, that didn't make a lot of people happy.
Right. You always had somebody mad at him.
Oh, yeah, surely. And then that's one of the things he really had to cope with. And I think he did a tremendous job. He used to say, after we had won a few pennants, he said, "Yeah, you guys might not like me very well now, but when you get your World Series check, you might like me a little more."
Right.
And that was true.
And they did.
And they did.
Looking back.
And I think looking back now, if you go to an old-timers game, we talk about it, and the players will say, "Well, he wasn't a very dumb guy after all. He was pretty smart, wasn't he?"
He did get a lot out of players like Woodling and Bauer.
Well, I know he always had them mad. And, of course, he played with 3 first basemen. He had Collins and Mize and even Johnny Huff one year, and they and then he hit against different pitchers in different towns, and so
did it always make sense what he did? Or?
No, a lot of times. I remember one time in Detroit with Jackie Jensen had hit 2 home runs, and he took him out for a pinch hitter. The next time he said, "Well, the laws against averages against Jensen hitting 3 home runs," and I think Cliff Mace came in and pinch hit for him, hit a home run, stuff like that. He had a lot of hunches. He played some hunches.
I digress a second. Let's talk about Jackie Mason. Jackie Mason was a Cal star.
Jackie Jensen.
No.
Jackie wasn't a comedian.
Jackie Mason. Did I say that, didn't I? That's all right. This is all natural. Jackie Jensen. Tremendous. Came up a Yankee, isn't it?
Right. He played at Oakland here and came up with Billy Martin in 1950. And I got to be real friendly with Jackie. In fact, I used to babysit his first daughter, Jan, and he'd go out with Joe, and the 4 of us would go out a lot of times, get a babysitter, and I got to be very friendly. In fact, when Jackie was coaching here, he used to ask me over to help him with his catchers.
Over Cal.
Never forgot. And Jackie was one tremendous person. I know he ran into problems with that Cal.
But what an athlete.
Oh, tremendous. Yeah, one of the best athletes I've ever seen.
Okay. Which brings us to the rich Yankee farm system in those days. And you were a catcher, and some of the catchers that came up in those days, Sherm Lawler, Gus Triandos, these were all-stars in the American League for years and years, and they played behind Yogi. And Ellie as...
And House was the third.
Ralph House?
Ralph House. 1 year, I guess it was 50, maybe 3. Let's say 53. They had Lou Berberettler was the MVP in the Eastern League. Elson Howard was the MVP in International League.
Lou Berberet
and Triandos.
He went on to Washington.
And Hal Smith. There were 4 of them, and they all came to spring training, and none of them made the team because Yogi naturally is going to start, and they couldn't have anybody sitting around. So they went out and played maybe another year in the minor league, or were traded to other clubs for needed pitching help. Well, with Baltimore, Turley and Larson as with Hal Smith went over there.
Right.
Triandos
went there, and Sherm Lawler.
Yeah. Sherm Lawler had gone to the St. Louis Browns.
Right.
I took Sherm Lawler's
played with
place.
Les Moss, as a matter of fact.
Right.
What a great guy.
All right. I took Sherm Lawler's place. I wore his uniform number. But it's in that book about how many, what we call Yogi rejects. We're not selling the book, but, put it up there. It's a good book.
There's the book. It's called the October 12.
It's about the 12 of us that were on the 5 consecutive World Championship clubs. And, in fact, there was only 8 of us that were there for every day. Joe Collins was recalled in 49. Mize came over from the Giants, and, of course, Jerry and Coleman and Bobby Brown had to go back to for service during the Korean War. Okay. But I'm sure they'd have been there.
You started out after your first year in baseball, you went into the service yourself. You spent 3 years.
I spent 3 years in the service. Jerry Coleman and I broke in together. We're both from San Francisco, both natives, and we went back to Wellsville, New York, in the Pony League with another fellow by the name of Bob Cherry. We had 17 going across country, and it was great. Came back. I went in the service, and then I'm playing with DiMaggio and Red Ruffing and.
Did the service prepare you for any of that?
Well, it did. It was wartime, but we were ball players, so we played ball. And but prepare me, my goodness, like I say, here I'm playing with major leaguers after only 3 months of minor league ball. And sure, it prepared me for baseball, prepared me for life. Well, got to meet people from all over, and then I would look at other people and say, other catchers in the service, and say, that fellow played in the big leagues. Boy, I can play in the big leagues. You know, I'm better than he is, and that prepared me. I say, I'm going to make it.
Yeah. We're talking to a man who played behind Yogi Berra for what, 8, 9 years?
Yeah, 8 and 9 years actually.
These other catchers are going on. Some of them tremendous careers. Lawler had a wonderful career.
And all of
Triandos with
Al Smith,
right.
Berberette.
Now, you're making the World Series money, and you were able to sit and not let your ego get involved. You didn't complain. You weren't a bellyacher.
No. Well, it was
when you played very effective. The only time you ever got more than 100 at-bats,
my first full year, it was in 49. But after the first couple of World Series, this isn't bad, and so
that's a great attitude.
Well, you were with New York, you were with the winner. When you were sold to another ball club by the Yankees, you went to a second division club. You never went to a contender in the American League, and or else they got you out of the league or made a deal. Well, I was always figuring I was going to be in a deal, but I was the perfect backup for Yogi because. I was a singles hitter. I hit for pretty good average, and I could play catch and throw. But I was there. That's it. And I realized when other players that come up and says, their ego. I want to play first string. Well, my goodness, who's going to take Yogi's job? So they'd say, "Well, you're a pretty smart guy hanging around there." And I said, I realized I was in a pretty good spot.
You saw Campanella a lot in the World Series.
Right.
Could you assess the two, Yogi, Campy?
Well, let's see. Campy, they're pretty much alike. You come down. Yogi doesn't get the credit that he should. He didn't want to catch. That's one of the reasons that I was recalled because he was playing the outfield, and I was recalled in '48. But Dickie came along, and he said, well, you're gonna be a catcher, and that's it. You got the job. And he got this confidence. That's all he lacked. But with him and Campy, Campy doesn't get credit for his. He was a good defensive catcher. So was Yogi. Yogi's an adequate thrower, maybe a little better than adequate. Of course, he had power in Yankee Stadium. Campy was up in Brooklyn. They were both leaders. Yogi would interrupt our meetings about certain hitters, and he'd say, well, you can't pitch this guy high anymore. You got to pitch him low. He's looking for that ball. So Yogi knew what was going on.
Yogi was one smart man. He was portrayed as this buffoon that Garagiola has him portrayed as. He was
no buffoon. He didn't have much schoolhouse, we used to say, but, boy, he knows what's going on. He could tell you who the roller derby champion was in 1940. He was a great man. He's still one of my closest friends. And we enjoyed ourselves. That's what the camaraderie was. I used to kid him. I said, you had to play hard because you saw me sitting there in a bullpen. And he laughed. But this is, like I say, the club. We were talking about it the other day with some people. We never had down there fighting among themselves. We never had any physical, really. Well, people to shout at each other. When you're together for 6-7 months, right. We used to see players more than we saw our wives.
Right. And 25 egos of some real superstars. Tell me about that pitching staff.
Well,
Rashi,
Reynolds, Lopat, naturally. And then Whitey Ford came along, but people
and you saw and caught these guys in the bullpen every day of your baseball life for eight years.
And of course, Whitey's in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
But I've always said in I think December of '49, I meant the book Halberstam wrote. Right. That they should put those three pitchers, Rashi, Reynolds, and Lopat, in the Hall of Fame as an entry, like the horses.
Right,
1A, they put them in 1A, B, and C. Put them in there. They deserve it. Look at their record over those 3 years. My goodness, 700% or more. But because they weren't around too long, they didn't win enough games, they're not in there. Why can't you put them?
And their careers were shortened by the service.
By the service, surely.
So that changed an awful lot. When you look at career numbers back then. DiMaggio lost years and years. Ted Williams lost years.
That's right.
Years. Tell me about Ted Williams, a visitor that came into Yankee Stadium.
Well, he was feared more so in Yankee Stadium than Boston because
short
closest. But you could pitch around him a little bit in Yankee Stadium because most of their power was right-handed. See, but Ted, he was there. Boy, I'll tell you, he was something else. In fact, I tell the Ted Williams story with. Bill McGowan, they call him number one, the umpire. We're pitching. I'm catching in Boston. Ted's hitting, and I thought he had him. We had him struck out, and I said, "Gee whiz, Mac!" He never turned around to McGowan, and the umpires. And he says, "That was a pretty good pitch." He says, "Throw the ball back, you Bush SB." He says, "They came to see him hit, not you catch." But he was. You could hear him on the on deck grinding that bat, And if you backed up first base. And you came back, and there he was. He's in the box already. Let's go.
He's waiting. He's waiting to hit.
Yeah. And you're Brooklyn people. You're. I don't know. You were a Yankee fan.
I was a Giant.
Giant. That's Giant fan.
That's
but we used to play the Dodgers. We'd play them
every year. Except that 1 year you played the
But not only that,
the Giants.
But we would play them. 2 or 3 times in Florida. Then three times. Before the season started.
Right.
And then we play them in the Maris Trophy game. So we would play the Dodgers almost about 3/4 of the games that we played all the other American League clubs.
You didn't play the Giants much because they trained.
No, they trained in Arizona.
Right. But, the trade that never came off, and I think about that a lot, is the Ted Williams for Joe DiMaggio trade.
Well,
how would that
affect each?
Yeah. I mean, how do you think things would have changed?
It's hard to say. I think they'd have both. They would both say, well, whatever. I'm sure Ted would have hit more in Yankee Stadium, and Joe would have hit more home runs in Boston. Because left field in Yankee Stadium was just, I used to call it the Mojave Desert or what they had a name for it. I can't remember. I had no power, so I didn't worry about hitting them out there. So, no, I think
they both would have ended up great.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't. They had talked about it, Yogi and topping, I guess, earlier.
Tell me about Billy Martin. You spent a lot of years with Billy. You were his coach later on when he
I roomed with him.
manager.
I roomed with him, and he was with Oakland when I was with Portland out here. And then when we came to the Yankees in '50, he wasn't married, and my wife was expecting our first child, and she hadn't come to New York yet. And the three of us, Hank Bauer was the other. Hank was playing, Billy and I weren't playing, but we would talk and say, well, Billy would say, if I ever managed the Oaks, meaning Oakland, not even thinking about the majors coming here.
Just thinking about the Oaks would always
and I managed the Seals, you'll be my coach, and vice versa. And by God, and when he got the job at Minnesota after he cleared up the problems he had with belting Brewer and breaking his jaw, when he got the job, he called me, and that was, that was '69. So we're talking about 19 years after he made that promise. And
I have that promise with my friend Len. Len, if I ever manage the Giants or the Mets, you're my bench coach.
Yeah.
So that's
no. He's loyal. Billy had his problems, like all of us did, but he was loyal. And you hear bad things about it, but Billy, nobody can say anything bad about Billy around me.
You were his coach in Minnesota?
Minnesota, Detroit, and Texas.
Okay.
And then when he helped me get the job at the Yankees and with Oakland, I was with Oakland too. And wherever he went, he got fired, and I got fired a minute later. But I got hired a lot too.
You got hired a lot. That was the good news. You never went on to coach in Yankee Stadium, did you?
No. I had because I had taken my pension after we got let go at Texas, and he never really. He wanted a younger fellow. I was getting a little too old. Every day grind throwing.
Were you here for Billy Ball?
I was here. I was working for Billy then. I was a minor league catching instructor. Yeah, I was here. Yeah.
Did you work with Marv Grissom at all?
Yeah, in spring training. He was only there to 1 year. Marv didn't really care. I guess he didn't like being away from home after all the years. He had, been not doing that. No, but we had a good family. Billy taught the people here how to win.
Right, and. There's the theory that he might have overused some of the pictures in those days.
Well, they talk about that, and I was there, but I don't remember any of them getting sore arms at the end of the year. It seemed sore arms popped up the next year, but they pitched a lot of innings. But my goodness, look at they were in a 5-man rotation then, I think. How about the four-man rotation and all of the guys pitching 300 innings?
Right.
How about
the guys that pitched 300 innings, Warren Spahn, year after year after year, and were never hurt?
Now think about this. Nobody had ever heard anybody say anything about the guys in the bullpen warming up day after day. Don't you think that attaches their arm?
Yeah.
But they're throwing. But there's been a lot of controversy in that, and maybe some of it had to do with that, but I don't think all of it had to do with that. He got him big. Let's say he got him big salaries.
That's for sure.
Billy went first class.
They won.
Billy upgraded the scouting, too. When another scout, we were making twice as much of any scout in baseball.
Tell me about scout. You spent the last 20-some-odd years of your career scouting.
Well, I don't know if I've been I was a scout. After I got through playing and managing in the Yankee chain, I scouted for 8 years with Washington Senators.
Oh, I knew that.
Oh, yeah. Then I went back as a coach for Billy, and then I went back with the Atlanta Braves, and I scouted for the Braves. And for Milwaukee, and 3 years with the Yankees, and my goodness, so I've got over 25 years scouting.
How has scouting changed since the free agent system that came in 1965?
You mean the draft? Oh, it trained tremendously because you used to be able to zero in 3, 4, 5 guys, sit with them, get to know them, maybe buy them a glove, pair of shoes. But now the personal scouting, getting into contact with the player and his family, doesn't do any good anymore because you don't know whether you're going to get him in the draft or not.
That's hurt baseball, though, because you're bringing people in that you really don't know into the baseball system that you really don't know much about or as much about as before.
Yeah, I think that the scouting now is tougher because you have to get all these names down to say, I have 20 names of people you want to
how high you
rank them and everything else, and you got to do a lot more. You got to go in and give them eye tests and stuff like that and find out a lot more things. The money is always involved too. They want this and that, and so that gets too deeply involved. The people, you sold yourself and your organization, you sold yourself a lot.
You've had all these years in baseball. Would you do anything differently?
No, not a thing. I feel that I'm the most fortunate man that ever lived, playing in New York, playing behind a Hall of Famer, and being a member of 7 pennant winners and 6 World Championship clubs. My goodness, how can anybody ask for any more than that?
Nice interview, Charlie.
Thank you.
All right.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Whoa. You are comfortably zoned, and that was 20 years ago when I did that interview. That was Charlie Silvera, former New York Yankee, and Charlie's still with us, but I don't think he's ever done a better interview, I'll tell you that. That was trippy. I listened to that. Like I say, I hadn't heard it in a long, long time, and I enjoyed it myself. And what can I tell you? One of the good ones, Charlie Silvera, New York Yankees. Number 29, Charlie Silvera, number 29. That was the voice of the Yankees, imitated by me, the Zigzag Man. And I'm going to close it before I make a total fool out of myself by saying this. I implore you, my listening audience, Charlie, you're still around, you're 90, I implore you to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, keep your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics that wear dresses, just to be on the safe side. Adios, amigos and amigas.